Welcome everybody to episode 3 of Murder Club, which today we're going to be going over the Zodiac Killer. I'm definitely excited for this one. I have a special guest host. Her name is Irishfox. Irish and I will be going over the Zodiac and his reign of terror over the San Francisco Bay Area. Anything he did in California. This is going to be definitely an awesome episode. Obviously, as you know, this is an unsolved mystery. We do not know who the killer is, and I hope you're prepared for this episode. Now, before we get started, hit that like button, smash that subscribe button here on YouTube, and in the podcast world, follow me on your favorite platform. Leave me a rating and a review. Let me know how I'm doing. Drive the podcast up the charts. And if you want to be a part of an episode and talk about a specific serial killer, let me know. Without further ado, let's get into it. So, Zodiac became known to the public in 1969, and he didn't fade out of the public until about 1970s era. He's even still now talked about nowadays with more advancements in DNA. But his deadly spree of serial murders actually began in 1968, just before Christmas. No one knows how many people he had killed or how long he continued to kill after he ended his contact with the media, because he was never found or arrested for the murders he claimed. So next up, we'll go over the incidents that had occurred, starting with December 20th, 1968. I will give what occurred, and my lovely guest Irishfox will talk about them more in a little bit detail. So December 20th, 1968, David Faraday, age 17, and Betty Lou Jensen, age 16, are killed in a gravel parking area known as Lover's Lane near Lake.
The couple was actually on their first date and planning to attend a Christmas concert at their high school, about 3 blocks from Jensen's home. They had insisted on stopping at a local restaurant beforehand. Before they were using his mother's Rambler. That was the car that they killed it. Okay,
yeah, no worries. So this one is the very first kill that we know of that happened. They were just out on a date, like she said, very first date, and he came up and killed them. He walked up to them. He drove up to them. He was blinding them with his headlights that he had in his car because he had the car beams on. And because he was doing that, they couldn't see him, and he just started opening fire on them. He then pulls them out of the car and shoots David in the back of the head. Betty Lou tried taking off running, but he shoots her in the back. This would be his first kills. This happens in that small town of Vallejo, and everyone was shocked by it, but nothing had happened.
Yeah, she was shot 5 times and found 8 feet from the car.
Yep, and he left them just sitting there. So next up, we are going to fast forward into 1969, to July 4th to be exact. A similar situation happens. A couple is found miles away in Vallejo in Blue Rock Springs by a golf course. This is Darlene Farren and Mcgu. Darlene was 25. Mike was 19. I can get away, Irish.
I think he blinded both of them, considering they were in cars for each of them, the couples. But according to the facts that they know, the killer drove up to the side of them, was carrying a flashlight and a 9mm Luger, which I'm guessing is a gun?
Yes.
Okay, I'm not good at knowing their names. Basically, the Zodiac Killer aimed at them, on July 5th, 1969 at 12:40 is when he had called the police department at 12:40 a.m. claiming to have done an attack to them.
Yep.
So first one he reported.
Yep. So interesting fact about this one: when he starts opening up fire on them, he leaves his car after his initial shots into it. He goes back to his car, grabs something else from it. Then he goes back over and starts shooting again. This was like a pretty ruthless thing. Darlene does not survive, but Mike did. He was able to give a little bit of description of the man, but not too much because of that blinding light in his eyes while he was being shot. So he's not thinking about what's going on or trying to get a description of this guy because he has light in his eyes and he's being shot. So yeah, like I just was saying, a few weeks later,
Later.
What was that?
It's a day later. He did it on the 4th, he reported it on the 5th.
Yeah, so he does that. He calls it in a day later, and then a few weeks later, he writes a letter into a newspaper, and is claiming that he had killed Darlene on July 4th, and the other in December of 1968. He takes credit and includes a cipher. This is the first of 3 ciphers. He taunts police and says that if they can solve the cipher, his identity will be in there. This was something that really had never been done before in the past. This made headlines in the San Francisco Bay Area. This cipher would eventually be solved by a couple by the name of the Hardens, but the Zodiac's identity would not be included in it. I believe this would basically be a taunt to police. Like then late September, a couple in Napa was attacked while having a picnic by Lake Berryessa. Their names are Cecilia Shepard and Brian Hart.
Just like with the other ones, he approached them with a gun. I believe the only one who survived was Hartnell, at least from what I've read, because they described basically that he was a 5'11" weighing probably more than 170 pounds. That he approached them wearing black executioner type hood with a chipmunk sunglasses over the eyes and a big like device on his chest with a 3 by 3 inch cross symbol, with a 3 by 3 inch cross symbol on it. For this one, he had killed the guard and subsequently stolen a car, explaining that he needed their car and money to travel to Mexico because the vehicle that he had been driving was too hot.
So it's kind of interesting that this one, he dresses up to try to conceal his identity. I'm guessing because he knew that the last person, or the last couple that he went after, they could identify him. So he actually forces Cecilia to tie up Brian, and then he tied up Cecilia. And then he puts his gun away, pulls out a knife, and then begins to Cecilia succumbs to her injuries from the knife attack, but Brian survives the attack. So he goes to Hartnell's car door and takes credit and alludes to the fact that he did the other crime. So he kind of, the thing that everything so far has in common with each other is this is all young couples. The difference is the first 2 couples happened at night, but this one was in the daylight, like during broad daylight. And instead of shooting like the other 2, he stabs these 2 victims, letting the male live, or the male just, he's not doing enough to the male and he has maybe something against females. I don't know. It's just both females die due to injuries in the last 2, and this one, or then the males don't. So it's kind of weird. So then the next one is definitely an outlier. This one is in October 1969. He's in San Francisco. He hails a cab, and Paul Stein, a 29-year-old cab driver, pulled over him.
For the cab driver, they estimated him to be a 35 to 45-year-old male, 5'10", but slightly older than the description provided by the teenagers that witnessed it before he survived. They initially believed the set of killings to be a robbery that escalated to homicidal violence. However, on October 13th, they received the newest claiming this killing.
Yep, so it was near Washington Street and Cherry Street. He deviated greatly from this with this kill. He shoots him in the back of the head with a 9mm semi-automatic pistol. But this was not the same 9mm Ruger that was used for Farren. 3 witnesses had saw this, and I believe they were either kids or teenagers. What was that?
They were teenagers.
Okay. So they were teenagers. They were on the southeast corner of the intersection. This ends up being a big break in the case. Zodiac walks around the car, and the 3 teenagers witness this and call the police because they believe the cab driver was being robbed. That was definitely not the case. Police arrived on the scene and quickly, and somehow an APB. Granted, this is at night, but Zodiac definitely was not a white male. Next up, we have, so on October 13th, 1969, the Chronicle receives a letter and a portion of Stein's bloodied shirt from the Zodiac. Then November 8th, 1969, a 4th cipher, 340 syllables long, or symbols long, is sent to the Chronicle. The cipher has yet to be solved. Letters would be sent until the 1970s.
Actually, it was solved.
After the 4th one was solved?
Yeah, back in 2020. That's why it came back in the news for the Zodiac Killer, because it was deciphered by an international team of private citizens, including American I cannot pronounce his last name. His last name is O. An Australian mathematician, Sam Blake, and a Belgian, Jarl Van Eyck, I think. I apologize if I pronounced that so wrong. In the descriptive message, he's basically saying he denied being Sam, who spoke on an AM San Francisco radio station. Yeah, because it was me. Because it was all sudden. It will send me to explaining that he's not afraid of a gas chamber because it'll send him to paradise, and that the rest of it had no other further clues of the Zodiac Killer, like any identifying.
Yep. So on the 9th, he mailed a 7-page letter to, who was it? The Chronicle again? Yeah. Do you remember what was in that letter?
After each sign, experts from the letter were published in the Chronicle on November 12th. Zodiac's claim that the same day Officer Don Fook?
It's either Fook or Fauk.
Sorry about that. But I remember explaining what had happened on the night of Stein's murder. And then on the 20th, exactly 1 year after the murders of David Faraday and Betty Lou Jensen, the Zodiac mailed a letter to Belly that included another swatch of Stein's shirt, and the Zodiac said he wanted Belly to help him.
So this guy, I remember watching the movie and this guy going on there talking about he had headaches, or he suffered from headaches and everything. Mm-hmm. This guy just seemed to want to taunt police and taunt everybody in the so next up we talk about February 18th, 1970. So we're 2 months later. Zodiac continued to communicate with authorities for the remainder of the 70s via letters and greeting cards to the press. In a letter postmarked April 20th, 1970, he writes, "My name is blank," followed by a 13-character cipher that hadn't been solved. He went on to state he was not responsible for the recent bombing of a police station in San Francisco. What he's referring to there is February 18th, 1970's death of Sergeant Brian McDonnell, 2 days after the bombing at Park Station in Golden Gate Park. But he added, there is more glory to killing a cop because a cop can shoot back. The letter included a diagram of a bomb that Zodiac claimed that he would use to blow up a school bus. At the bottom of the diagram, he wrote, $10, SFPD =. So he's threatening school, or he's threatening children by saying he's going to blow up a school bus.
Right, which completely changes his MO of targeting young couples.
It definitely does, and it kind of leads me to think, like, was the Zodiac working alone? Could he have been working with somebody else, or could this be multiple people doing it, or like a copycat trying to gain some notoriety? Or do you...
I still think it's one person, or that it was one person, considering we have no clue if the Zodiac is still even alive to this day. And also, since they never figured out exactly who the Zodiac Killer is.
They had multiple people that they suspected, but they had one person that they really thought was the killer. Was it author? Yeah, he was like one of the main suspects. He died, I believe, what was it, in 1992, and he was like 58 years old or something like that. Yeah, August 26th, 1992, he passed away. But I think a lot of people thought it was him, which it did match a lot of his like facial features, how he wrote, and a lot of things. If you watch the movies and everything, he wore a watch that had, or they depict in the movie that he wore a watch that had the Zodiac symbol on it. He wrote with the same hand as the Zodiac. Same height, same build, and everything like that. So he definitely did fit the description of the Zodiac. So next up, we're going to go to March 22nd, 1970, or yeah, 1970. Kathleen Johns was driving from San Bernardino to Petaluma to visit her mother. She was 7 months pregnant and had her 10-month-old daughter beside her while heading down the highway in Modesto. A car behind her started honking its horn and flashing its headlights. She pulled off the road and stopped. The man parked behind her, approached her car, stating that he observed that her right rear wheel was wobbling and offered to tighten the lug nuts. After finishing his work, the man drove off. Yet when Johns pulled forward to re-enter the highway, the wheel almost immediately came off. The man returned and offering to drive her.
Nope, just that they basically drove around for 90 minutes back and forth around back roads.
Okay. So April 20th, 1970, Zodiac bomb sketch was sent to the San Francisco Chronicle. On the same day, a letter sent to the San Francisco Chronicle. Did you see what these letters, what that?
I didn't find anything either.
Okay. Do you want to talk about the greeting card that was postmarked for April 28th? That postcard was a little interesting from what I saw. He sends he sends it to the Chronicle again.
Sorry to hear your ass is dragging. I hope you enjoy yourselves when I have my blast. P.S. If you don't want me to have this blast, you must do two things. One, tell everyone about the bus bomb with all details. Two, I would like to see some nice Zodiac buttons wandering around town. Everyone else has these, peace, Black Power, Melvin eats blubber, etc. It would cheer me up considerably if I saw a lot of people wearing my button. Please, no nasty ones like Melvin's, thank you. And then he signs it.
So that one, he's kind of narcissistic on this one. Like, he's a little bit too much into himself. Like, you want people to wear, you want people to wear a button with you on it. Like,
it's like he wants to be worshipped like a lot of the male serial killers are.
Then show yourself. Like, you want some.
You're not gonna get fucking those weird ass fucking women fawning over you.
Yeah, like he wants the notoriety, but it's like, dude, nobody knows who you are. At least like Bundy, he didn't even conceal himself. Like, he was telling people, like, my name's Ted, when he was doing his thing.
He's like, hi, I'm Ted, and he's like this. Everybody thought he was like so sweet and innocent.
Yeah, I mean, and this guy, he's just. I mean, his first two kills, he was wide open, but he blinded the people. And then with the other ones, like, he's in a hood. Like,
he's in a hood, and he kind of almost, and he has a cross on it, like almost like, oh, I'm gonna dress almost like a priest or something.
Yeah, it's like you're hiding your identity, but you want people to wear buttons that show the zodiac on it and everything. Like,
show your signal, your signature. Yeah.
I had a bat signal. So June 26, 1970, in a letter postmarked that day, he stated that he was upset that he did not see people wearing zodiac buttons. Here we go with the buttons again. He wrote, "I shot a man sitting in a parked car with a .38 caliber weapon." The zodiac was possibly referring to the murder of 25-year-old Sergeant Richard Reddish. Maybe that might be it. 1 week earlier, at 5:25 a.m. on June 29th, Radtish was writing a parking ticket in his squad car when an assailant unrelated to the traffic violation shot him in the head with a .38 caliber pistol through the closed driver's side window. He died 15 hours later. So this one, I feel like he probably just saw this one in the papers and he was like, let's see if I could put my name on it. I think he wanted to stay in the limelight with this one. I don't really think he killed that person. What do you think?
I don't think so either, because that's not his MO. His MO was teenage couples. And then just to switch it up and be like, oh yeah, like, let me just go kill this cop because they're sitting here and I didn't see my buttons all over the place. Like, no one's gonna worship you, dude. I'm sorry, but no.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, he was trying to taunt police. Like,
right, why are you gonna kill a police officer in broad daylight?
Yeah, it didn't make sense that would have been him. But he tries to take. So then July 24th, 1970, he takes credit for Kathleen Johns.
Yeah, she was the one she's the mother.
Yep.
That was driving with their 10-month-old daughter and everything in the back, who was pregnant, and the person that abducted her or anything basically boosted her wheel and basically did it just to kidnap her or anything, because she was a mother alone with a child.
Yep. So,
which to that assailant was easy to take.
Yeah, so in a July 26th, 1970 letter, Zodiac paraphrases a song from the Mcgu, adding his own lyrics about making a little list of the ways in which he planned to torture his slaves in paradise. The letter was signed with a large exaggerated cross, circle symbol, and a new score. This score was =13, SFPD = 0. A final note at the bottom of the letter stated, P.S. The Mount Diablo code concerns radians, +# inches along their radians. In 1981, a close examination of the radian hint by Zodiac researcher Gareth Penn led to the discovery that a radiant angle, when placed over the map per Zodiac's instructions, pointed to the location. Next step, we're going to talk about September 6, 1970. So I could only find this person's last name. I can't remember her first name, but the last name is Lass. She was a nurse at the Sahara.
Donna.
What was that?
First name's Donna.
Okay. Do you want to go over this one?
September 6, 1970, yeah, he sent the postcard to the carnival, right?
I believe so, yeah.
Zodiac appeared to claim responsibility for the disappearance of Donna Lass on September 6, 1970, made from a collage of advertisements and magazine lettering. It featured a scene from an advertisement for condominiums in a Texas Sierra Club. Sought victim 12. Peeked through the pines, past Lake Toho areas, and around in the snow. The Zodiac cross circle symbols. The Zodiac's cross circle symbol was in both The place of the usual return address in the lower right section of the front face of the postcard. She was a nurse in Saratoga Hotel and Casino. She worked till 2 a.m. on September 6, 1970, treating her last patient at 1:40 a.m. Later that day, both last employer and landlord received phone calls from an unknown male falsely claiming that Lass had left town because of a family emergency. She was never found. What appeared to be a gravesite was discovered near Claire Tappan Lodge in Northern California on Sierra Club property. No evidence has been uncovered.
This one, he attacks a nurse. Like, he's just, if this was him, he's just like all over the place now. After he went couple, cab driver, claims to be a cop killer, and then a nurse.
Claims to have kidnapped a mom, a pregnant mom and her kid.
Yeah. So it's
and
like,
now a nurse.
If it's still him doing this, like, he's definitely all over the place now.
He's definitely lost his mind even worse, and he'd already been gone.
Definitely.
And at this point, it's just to basically stay in the limelight. Like, oh, no one's talking about me anymore. Let me do this to bring it back.
Yeah, it just
either that or they were close to figuring out who he was.
I think it might have been a mixture of both. Like, he's trying to stay relevant in the public, and they were getting close to it, but who knows? Obviously, they didn't get close enough to figuring out who it was. That's why I think them going after Arthur Allen was probably their biggest suspect, and that's probably the closest they ever got to it, but they couldn't find anything definitively on it. And when you think about it, back in the 60s and 70s, DNA testing wasn't as much as good as it was, or good as it is today. If anything, it really didn't exist too much back then. You're really talking DNA evidence,
Fingerprints, anything.
I mean, DNA testing didn't come around until 1987. So that's really when it started to take off. And this is, you're already 10, 12 years before that. So police didn't know, hey, let's keep some DNA. Let's keep that evidence like really good. And just from looking at other stories, like, police work wasn't that great in California back in like the 50s, 60s, and 70s when it came to preserving evidence, preserving crime scenes and stuff like that.
Right, so they probably, if it was now, they probably could have figured easily out who he was or who he is.
Yeah, there would have been,
if all that said evidence was still
yeah, there would have been something left around, because if he so if he kidnapped the mom and daughter and like took them, there would have been some type of evidence of that left somewhere. Or even the first two, if he wasn't hidden, there would have been some type of evidence. I mean, obviously a lot of places now have cameras. There's like cameras everywhere. So something would have been seen nowadays versus back then. Not so much. And it took a while for news to get around, because you either had to wait for the newspaper or you had to wait for the news on the next day to publish this. Not like today where you just go on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and the moment something happens, you hear about it. So on March 22nd, 1971, a postcard goes to the Chronicle addressed to Patrick Averley and believed to be from Zodiac. It appeared to claim responsibility for the disappearance of Donna Lass from September 6th. So that doesn't come until
the whole year, almost the whole year after.
Yeah,
September, October, November, December, January, February, March. 6 months later.
Yeah, 6 months later, he's sending a letter claiming that kill, which, that makes...
It doesn't match his MO because after the first kill, like, he was reporting them, like, right after they happened.
Yeah, the first one he reported, what was it, the same day or the next day? And
it was like the next night, yeah.
Yeah, the second one, he leaves something on the car and then says something soon after it. So it just doesn't make sense that a whole 6 months later, he comes out and says something.
Right.
And then on October 7th, 1970, the Chronicle received a 3x5-inch card signed by the Zodiac with the small cross with the blood drawn. The letter's message was formed by pasting word letters from an edition of the Chronicle, and 13 holes were punched across the card. Inspectors Armstrong and Tashi agreed that it was highly probable that the card had been sent by the Zodiac. So this is another one that's kind of an outlier. Like, it's not his MO, because he sent ciphers and he sent other letters that were handwritten.
Right.
Like, what's the difference? Like, why did they think it was highly probable that this was from him when it's something that he, one, wrote in blood or drawn in blood, and then two, he cut out like letters, he cut out words from the Chronicle. Hey, what do you think about that?
I think it was a copycat, to be honest.
Yeah, that one just doesn't seem like it's plausible that it was him. I mean, it very well could be, but I mean, maybe he was just trying to lead people off of his scent, but it...
Doesn't he normally sign that specific way, though?
He usually does. He usually signs with the, I believe, the circle with the cross inside of it.
Yeah, this one doesn't even mention that being on there.
Yeah. And even like the next one, the next card that he sends, he signs it with a Z. So like he's... The only way that can be explained if it is him is if he's trying to draw them away from like his scent, like if he knew that they were onto him and he was doing it. So like the next one was sent to Paul Avery again, because he had been covering the Zodiac case, and he receives a Halloween card signed with the letter Z and the Zodiac's crossed circle symbol. Handwritten inside the card was a note, "Peekaboo, you were doomed." The threat was taken seriously and was the subject of the front page story in the Chronicle. Soon after receiving the letter, Avery received an anonymous letter alerting him to the similarities between the Zodiac's activities and the unsolved murder of Cherry Joe Bates, which had occurred 4 years earlier at the City College in Riverside in the greater Los Angeles area, more than 400 miles away. More than 400 miles south of San Francisco. Avery reported his findings in the Chronicle on November 16th, 1970. So with this one, so he threatens the guy, and they're taking it seriously, so they post it in the newspaper. Like, if this is Zodiac, you're giving him what he wants by putting him on the front page.
Yep.
Like he's doing these things to get on the front page. Remember, he wants notoriety. He wants people to wear a Zodiac button, and you're just feeding into it and putting him on the front page. Obviously, if other things are to be true from what he said in the past, he could do some things if you don't do what he wants, but it doesn't line up with what he was doing at the beginning, just like everything else. So we'll go on to March 13th. So we're what, 4 or 5 months after the last letter? So 5 months after Avery's article linking the Zodiac to the Riverside murder, The Zodiac mailed a letter to the Los Angeles Times. In a letter, he credited the police instead of Avery for discovering his Riverside activity, but they are only finding the easy ones. There are a hell of a lot more down there.
Yeah, and with that so-called letter about claiming to have killed Bates, it was disproven in August of 2021 that by DNA analysis that it was a teenager that basically he says that he was troubled and that he wrote the letters seeking attention. The author of the one claiming that to be the one of the college student girl was not him.
So we have it. DNA evidence.
Yeah.
So now you're gonna fast forward a little bit because nothing too much happens from 1971 or March 13th, 1971 to September 7th, 1972. Unless you know of anything. Have you seen anything in between those two times?
Nope.
Okay. So in September 1972, San Francisco police obtained a search warrant for Arthur Lee Allen's residence. In 1974, Allen was arrested for sexually assaulting a 12-year-old boy. He pleaded guilty and served 2 years imprisonment. That's egregious. Like, how was it only 2 years, for one? And two,
Right.
like, I know they found a lot of things, or they found some things in his residence. Did you see anything about what they found?
No, I just found that they turned up the negative.
So yeah, then the 2 years for sexually assaulting a 12-year-old boy, like, come on now.
2 years, that shouldn't be, in my opinion.
2 years is definitely nothing. Like, so you just let this guy pretty much get away with traumatizing a young boy. So next up, we're gonna head up to, unless you have anything that you've seen, we're gonna head up to January 29th, 1974.
Nope.
All right. So Zodiac was silent for nearly 3 years. The Chronicle had then received a letter postmarked on that day praising The Exorcist as the best satirical comedy that he had ever seen. The letter included a snippet of verse from the Mcgu and an unusual symbol at the bottom that has remained unexplained by researchers. He concluded the letter with a new score. And this score was me equals 37, SFPD equals 0. So now he's praising movies and sending snippets of the Mcgu again, which he did before. And then he has a new symbol on, an unusual symbol on the bottom of the letter. So he's not putting his zodiac symbol that he typically does on the bottom of his letter this time, which is still another weird thing.
Yeah.
So The Exorcist came out on December 26, 1973. So this is about a month later he's sending this and praising the movie. So he had to have gone to a theater. So I would say he was definitely sitting in a theater with a whole bunch of other people while watching The Exorcist. And nobody knew it. So then February 14th, 1974, further communications sent by the public to members of the media. Some contain similar characteristics of previous Zodiac writings, the Chronicle received a letter postmarked on this day informing the editor that the initials for the Symbionese Liberation Army spelled out an Old Norse word meaning kill. However, the handwriting was not authenticated as Zodiac's. Now, one thing the movie does cover is that author Lee Allen, I believe it was, does tend to write multiple different ways. And I believe he is ambidextrous as well. And you're going to write two different ways when you write with each hand. You're not going to write the same, exactly the same with both. So in May 8th, 1974, a letter to the Chronicle postmarked on that day featured a complaint that the movie Badlands was murder glorification and asked the paper to cut its advertisements, signed only as a citizen. The handwriting, tone, and surface irony were all similar to earlier Zodiac communications. The Chronicle subsequently received an anonymous letter postmarked July 8th, 1974, complaining of their publishing's the writings of the anti-feminist colonist Marco Spinelli. The letter was signed The Red Phantom. Read with rage, the Zodiac's authorship of the letter is debated. That's kind of a weird one. Did he change his name from Zodiac to Red Phantom?
No clue.
So next up would be, or do you have anything between that and 1976?
Nope.
Alrighty. So okay, this one doesn't make sense, but okay. My notes are just completely screwed up. So a letter dated April 24th, 1978 was initially deemed authentic, but was declared a hoax less than 3 months later by the experts. Dave Toschi, the SFPD homicide detective who worked the case since the Stein murder, was thought to have forged the letter. Author Armistead Maupin believed the letter to be similar to fan mail that praised the work of Toschi in the investigation which he received in 1976. He believed both letters were written by Toschi, which he admitted to writing the fan mail. Toschi denied forging the Zodiac letter and was eventually cleared of any charges. The authenticity of this letter remains uncertified or unverified. So at this point, he's kind of just gone into, like, he's gone quiet. Zodiac really hasn't been doing much or saying much, if he's said anything at all. If all of these aren't like just hoaxes and just not him at all. What do you think?
I'm not really sure because that's only suspect.
All right, then the next thing, unless you have anything between 1976, the next thing I've got is from 1987. All right. So in 1987, after hearing the victim's screams for help, a man and his son who were fishing in a nearby cove discovered the victims and summoned help by contacting park rangers, Napa County Sheriff's deputies Dave Collins and Ray Land were the first law enforcement officers to arrive at the crime scene. Shepard was conscious when Collins arrived, providing him with a detailed description of the attacker. Hartnell and Shepard were taken to Queen of the Valley Hospital in Napa by ambulance. Shepard lapsed into a coma during transport and never regained consciousness. She died 2 days later, but Hartnell survived to recount his tale to the Napa County detective Ken Narlow, who was assigned to the case from the outset, worked on solving the crime until his retirement from the department in 1987. Like, his book advances the theory that Zodiac was author Lee Allen, but it was all
But chronicles the history of Zodiac Killer, 60s to 70s. In California, from the first-hand details covered. Okay. The book describes the investigations of the many law enforcement branches such as the LAPD, FBI, and CIA. It shows later chapter deal with Grace Smith's many theories on the case, and the book eventually cites 2 possible suspects who were given. Is that it? I have no clue around that. I'm guessing it's personas. Bob Starr and Donald Andrews, and of the circumstantial evidence against them, Grace Smith uses police departments that fell within jurisdictions of the murder, and especially from Inspector Dave Tashi from the San Francisco Police Department, who worked the Zodiac case. Although the case was never solved, there were instances where the solid evidence was held among a number of suspects even after the Zodiac was done.
It's funny. I found an article that Mark Ruffalo had made a comment about the whole thing. So it was he portrayed Tashi, like Dave Tashi, in the movie, in the 2007 film. He says if you get into who these cops were, you realize how they have to take their hunches and their personal beliefs out of it. Dave Tashi had said to him, as soon as that guy walked into the door, I knew it was him. He was sure he had him, but he never had a solid piece of evidence, so he had to keep investigating every other lead, which is definitely true. Like, you can't just go over the hunch of it, and you can't go by circumstantial evidence, because no prosecutor or state attorney is going to take circumstantial evidence without anything hard to try to go after somebody.
Right.
So the Zodiac originated the name himself in a series of letters, a series of taunting letters and cards that he mailed to regional newspapers, threatening killing sprees and bombings if they were not printed. Some of the letters included cryptograms and ciphers in which the killer claimed that he was collecting his victims as slaves for the afterlife. Of the 4 ciphers he produced, 2 remain unsolved. 1 was cracked in 2020, like Iris was saying. While many theories regarding the identity of the killer have been suggested, the only suspect authorities ever publicly named was author Lee Allen. He was a former elementary school teacher. Wow. And a convicted sex offender who died in 1982. So he was a school teacher, an elementary school teacher, and a sex offender. Wow. Like, talk about someone who's around kids all day and just what his thoughts may have been the entire time before he even acted out on it.
Right, or if he did act out on it, no one knew.
Yeah, like how many times did he act out on it where nobody said anything? Like, no kids said anything. Like, how many kids may have been traumatized by this guy?
Right, or still are technically.
Well, yeah, so like, but how many kids do, like, I wonder how many kids he did anything to, or was that one the only one?
Right.
I don't think it would have been. if he did it once, he probably had the urge before, or he probably did it
He
before.
probably did it before, yeah.
And just no other kids spoke up about it, maybe?
Well, yeah, because a lot of the time, especially with like that and everything, like the kids look up to you as an authority figure. So like for a pedophile and all that, like a sex offender for that part, they get into kids' heads and like, hey, you tell like this is what bad's gonna happen. And being kids, you're super vulnerable and everything, and you believe them.
Yeah, exactly. Like you don't know any better at that age either. Like,
no, you just believe what they say. You're like, oh no, if my teacher says they're gonna hurt my mom and dad, I better not tell my mom and dad because I don't want them hurt.
Exactly. Like they're just gonna comply. Like they're not really gonna question anybody. Especially if their parents kind of distilled that in them, because back in those days, I mean,
no one really knows about it.
Yeah. And like back when I was a kid, like a lot of adults told kids like kids are meant to be seen, not heard.
Like, yeah, thankfully for me, my parents didn't do that. Like, if anybody ever does like anything to you or says something like that to you, they're like, I don't give a fuck what they say. Tell us.
Yeah.
Because like my mom and all that was sexually assaulted as a kid. Gotcha. By a family member. So like she was pretty adamant on like, if this ever happens to my kids, I will cut this person down. And I do not blame her.
No, I don't either. So in 2002, the SFPD developed a partial DNA profile from the saliva on stamps and the envelopes of Zodiac letters. The SFPD compared this partial DNA to the DNA of Arthur Lee Allen, and a DNA comparison was also made with Don Chaney, who is Allen's former close friend and the first person to suggest Allen may be the Zodiac Killer. Since neither test result indicated a match, Allen and Chaney were excluded as the contributors of the DNA. So we're talking 32 years later. Is DNA really going to last that long? Like, was it, the question I would have, it was the DNA preserved to the utmost? Yeah. Like, if it wasn't preserved enough, like, would they be able to pull anything from it?
Sometimes, because they can still pull DNA from, like, bodies that have been dead for years.
True.
I wonder how much it's advanced now. But this also was back in, what, 2002?
Yeah.
It's advanced so much more than it has then.
Yeah, definitely. I wonder if they still had those stamps now, if they would be able to try it again now.
That, or like somehow get like a fingerprint or something off it.
Yeah. So in Melvin Belly's 1976 autobiography, he describes an engineered encounter with himself, undercover police officers, and a Riverside law student. The young man had allegedly claimed that he was the Zodiac Killer. Upon meeting the young man face to face, Belly decided that they were investigating the wrong man for the Zodiac crimes. In 2002, Robert Graysmith described the possibility that a former student of the Pacific High School in the San Bernardino area was the source of the Zodiac alias, which I think you already touched on that, didn't you?
I think so.
Okay. So since the Zodiac seized writing communications around 1974, the unusual nature of the case led to international interest that has sustained throughout the years. The San Francisco Police Department marked the case inactive in April 2004, but reopened it at some point prior to March 2007. The case remains open in the city of Vallejo, as well as Napa County and Solano County. The California Department of Justice has maintained an open case file on the Zodiac murder since 1969. So we're talking, what, 60 years would be 2029? So we're talking 60 something years this case is, or almost 60 years this case would be open. A long time for a case to be open and not be solved. On March 3rd, 2017, an American Greetings Christmas card sent to the Chronicle postmarked 1990 in Eureka was rediscovered in their photo files by editorial assistant Daniel King. The letter was handed over to the Vallejo police. Inside the envelope with the card was a photocopy of 2 U.S. postal keys and a magnet keychain. The handwriting on the envelope resembles Zodiac's print, but was declared inauthentic by forensic document examiner Lloyd Cunningham. However, not all Zodiac experts agree with Cunningham's analysis. There is no return address on the envelope, nor is his cross-circled signature to be found. Then, so in October 2021, the Case Breakers, which you talked about this, a team of over 40 cold case investigators composed of former law enforcement investigators, military, intelligence officers, and journalists, claimed to have identified the Zodiac Killer as Gary Francis Post, who died in 2018 at the age of 80 years. The team claimed to have uncovered forensic evidence and photos from Post's dark room and noted that scars on Post's forehead matched those they said were described on the killer. They also claimed that removing the letters of Post's name from one of Zodiac's cryptograms revealed an alternate message. The FBI subsequently stated that the case remained open and that there is no new information to report. While local law enforcement expressed skepticism of the team's findings to the Chronicle, Riverside police officer Ryan Railsback said the Case Breakers' claims largely relied on circumstantial evidence, and author Tom Voigt, a Zodiac investigator, called the claims bullshit. Voigt noted that no witnesses in the case described Zodiac as having scars on his forehead.
Right, because then the picture that you've seen in like anything you look up in the Zodiac Killer, there's no scars.
Yeah, any drawing, like none of the drawings have it, and then he, I mean, obviously, like Paul Stein can't say anything because he's dead. The one, the first 2 males that survive, they couldn't see the guy, so they couldn't tell you anything. Like, they give you a description, but you're not going to know if the guy had scars because you were blinded.
Right.
So, where this guy comes up with, he has scars on his forehead, I think he's just grabbing for straws because he wanted his, like, 15 seconds of fame.
Yeah, I remember hearing about that. I was like, well, it's not they actually solved it. Like, you know, if my dad ended up like my actions.
Yeah. So so now we're going to talk more about the stamps. In May 2018, Vallejo Police Department announced their intention to attempt to collect the Zodiac Killer's DNA from the back of stamps he used during his correspondence. Analysis by a private laboratory was expected to check the DNA against GED match. It was hoped the Zodiac Killer might be caught in a similar fashion to the Golden State Killer, Joseph James D'Angelo, which is going to be another person I want to do an episode on. In May 2018, a Vallejo police detective said that results were expected in several weeks. However, as of June 2022, no results had been reported. So 2 months ago, no results from those testings. So that leads me to believe that the DNA is probably gone from the back of those stamps.
Probably. Or he never actually licked them.
Yeah, he could have just used a little dab of water.
Yeah.
Yeah, nothing says you don't have to lick anything. You just get some water and put it on those things and you're good to go. But back then, how many people were actually thinking that way? I mean, if you're doing killings and everything and you don't want to get caught, I mean, that would be one reason to think like that.
That, and probably because some people also, like, at least me being back or anything, I do not like killing them.
No, definitely not.
Or envelopes either, like, with milk, I will water or I will tape it down.
Yep. So
It's like that glue taste is so gross.
and I'm sure it can't be good for you either.
Mm-mm.
Okay, so December 2020, the solution to Zodiac's 340 symbol cipher was solved, including faithful transliterations of spelling and grammatical errors in the original. So that was solved 2 years ago. And
and then last year they tried to claim that they solved it without
and
evidence.
so if we solve this, obviously there's still 2 more that haven't been solved. But if you have 2 of them and really there's no names in them to tell you who it was, we can assume the other 2 letters don't have anything worth a damn in them to give us the Zodiac's identity.
Unless that one that says my name is and blank the cipher. Because that one hasn't been solved yet.
Yeah, but
unless one that surprisingly actually does have said person's name in it.
I mean, that would be interesting if he did put his name in that one, because that would probably be, you would think that would be the easiest one, because the easiest one to solve because it's so short. But like, he claimed in his first cipher that was solved, or the first cipher to be solved, he claimed that his name was in that one.
Unless it actually was and they just didn't figure it out.
And that could be it too. Like, the people that solved it might not have solved it the correct way.
That, or like how inside hidden like normal text, like capitalize things, like they like emphasize on something.
Yeah.
Like he could have done that too, like, and with it being in a cipher, you don't know if he's actually capitalizing or if he's doing lowercase or if he's referencing to where his name could have actually been in it and he was overlooked.
That is definitely true. I've tried looking at that, and I've tried looking up ways to like solve the cipher, and I'm just like, nope, too complicated. Yeah, to decode it.
I've seen those, and I was like, yeah, no.
Yep, not for me.
I am not that type of smart.
Yep, definitely not. But do you have anything else to add?
Fun fact: when I first heard about the Zodiac Killer, because I didn't know what exactly he was doing, I thought because of the name, he was killing people with zodiac signs.
I could see where you would get that.
Because his name is Zodiac Killer, so I was like, wait, is he killing like different zodiac signs? But then like they're like, oh, there's supposedly, you know, so many victims. And I'm like, but there's 12 zodiac signs. How are there more victims?
Yeah, there would be more victims than zodiac signs.
Yeah. And then I fully looked into it and I was like, oh, I'm so dumb.
That's funny. Well, Irish, thank you for coming on the episode and helping me out with this.
Thank you for having me.
Yep, I really appreciate it. Yeah.
I think the more that we develop computers and things like that, I think eventually they might be able to decipher it with technology and maybe, just maybe, solve the dang case.
Hopefully.
And put an end to it.
Hopefully, eventually.
Whether that person's dead or not.
Yeah. At least you could put a name to it and families of the victims.
So they get closure too.
Yeah, families of the victims definitely need closure, even if you're probably 2 generations removed now from that. Right,
or if like say said families are still like there's still people alive from that time when it happened. Whether it's their siblings or anything like that. Yeah. Give them closure to know, okay, the killer for whoever in your family was killed and everything was finally named, and either A, caught, or B, has been dead for however long.
Yeah.